everyone, and welcome back to the Better Advertising with Better Media podcast. I am incredibly excited to have a returning guest, Carolyn, Chief Marketing Officer of Pattern. For those who have listened, we've had you on before. We did a really fun episode on 1P versus 3P. Anyone who hasn't checked that out, I highly, highly recommend it because there is a lot of incredible value being added, which is why I'm pumped to have you back on another hot topic in the industry. So for one, Carolyn, thank you so much. You're incredible.
Thank you for having me. I am so happy to be back. And like you said, it was a super fun conversation. So super excited to dive in to AI, another super exciting topic.
Yeah. So I think the part that I'm really pumped about is AI is obviously a buzzword in the space. If you are at Amazon's Unboxed, they released quite a few different tools around AI. Anyone who is doing anything, I think, has been using AI, whether it's for creating recipes at home or coming up with fun songs. The problem with AI, though, is you hear it everywhere. How do you actually make it tangible? Like, how do brands start activating on it? Everyone's getting the messages from leadership. I've been on multiple RFPs. They're like, how are you using AI? I'm like, well, half of this I feel like is kind of bullcrap and I could pitch you on it just to sound smart. But like, in reality, you all manage a ton of brands from incredibly large to incredibly lean teams. How do you guys see AI being applied?
Yeah, such a good question. And I am so with you. It's like, I feel like I've been to a number of conferences and it feels like every other word is AI, right? And it's like, everyone laughs because it's like, okay, that topic again. It's really fun. So we do a Pattern, we do events called Executive Acceleration Forums, and we bring brand executives to Utah. And it's so interesting. Our CEO and co-founder, Dave, always asks this question. I think he comes from a data science background and machine learning. And so AI is just one of those topics that he is like incredibly passionate about. But in his session at those events, he does this sort of informal survey. And he always starts, he's like, okay, who is using AI tools like ChatGPT and Midjourney? And, it's like almost everyone in the room raises their hand and they're kind of like, okay, yeah, like I dabble, And then he says, who in this room has used AI tools to generate listing content like copy or images? And then, it's probably 75% of the room. And then he keeps filtering it down. It's like, okay, who's generated copy that's live on site right now? And then that's, more hands go down. And then who's generated like a complete product listing using AI? And I think over the course of like 6 events this year, I think there was one person who raised their hand. Anyway, it's something that we're definitely seeing brands engage with, but I think there's still a bunch to kind of learn and figure out what's the right way to use it. I think you touched on something kind of interesting, which is there's almost like pressure to use it, right? It's like you almost feel like if you're not using it, you're getting left behind. And yet there is, I think, still this gap in terms of the reality of where can it be accretive and how can it help in a way that's truly additive for brands who care a lot about how they show up to their customers. So
100%, and a way that's scalable. I feel like that's kind of a piece that can be a little bit difficult. And from what I've seen in the market so far, I think there's 2 big areas that make the most sense from an easily applicable space. And that's content on the SEO side, the title side, the backend keyword side, and then creative. And maybe not full scale creative yet. We know that some of the softwares have difficulties with people and consistency and editability from once you get a creative to market. But I think those areas are almost, in my opinion, like immediate applications for AI. Is there anything that you're seeing like brands really lean into in those 2 areas?
I think you touched on it. I mean, I guess for a little bit of context, you mentioned we work with a lot of brands and those teams are incredible, right? They are so, whether they're big or they're small, there are some really amazing people. And yet you look at just the scale of content creation that needs to happen to have your products on e-commerce marketplaces, right? You take even just a single SKU and you're like, okay, you multiply that by 6 different images in the image stack. You think about, 30 different product attributes. You think about, okay, maybe there's 5 different languages if you're selling globally. You think about 8 different retailers and, that's before even any variations. And so that's like thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of, content and data points that you need to both create, let alone optimize. And so just the opportunity, I think in content, it's a space that is like ripe for, using AI. I think you are exactly right. Like that is the most obvious application. And I think where we are seeing brands engage. And I can see, you think about the challenge and it's like easy to see why.
Yeah. And I want to go even deeper on that because, 30 to 40 years ago, you may have had an incredible D2C website and you had packaging, and then you maybe had a billboard ad or a direct mailer or something along those lines. Nowadays, it's not enough to just have those because each marketplace also has its own algorithm, which adds a whole different layer of complexity, especially on the SEO copy side of you're having to optimize. Like anyone who's sold on both Amazon and Walmart will almost be the first to tell you that what worked on Amazon did not work on Walmart. They are both looking at different inputs, whether one's pulling in in-store data or XYZ. So that is a whole another black box that's being layered in. And that's, a good opportunity for AI to understand those inputs and then layer them into the brands. But all of this is being mentioned without even including advertising, which is, naturally my bread and butter. So the complexity of this is exponential, but the opportunity, I think, is even more so because we have the opportunity to use AI to expand upon all of the marketplaces, all of the different retailers. And then also we can go another step further and start doing a better job of understanding our audiences. And I think that's what is really exciting. Like creative and copy is baseline, like that needs to be fantastic. But we now have the opportunity with Amazon opening things like Amazon Marketing Cloud and all of the other marketplaces also allowing for more understanding of their audiences to tweak the content and the creative to be more aligned with the specific people that are clicking on our listing. And I think that's really valuable.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I think you touched on something that's so important, which is personalization, right? It's like, I think more and more that is the trend. It's like, that's what converts. And I just don't think you can take that. I don't think any brand could take that on, using humans or manually. It's like, you have to use technology. You have to use AI. It's just impossible without it. So
100%. And it's also a speed to market play at this point. Like not only do you need to understand the inputs, and that's where AI can be beneficial. I have a dog in the background. I hear him barking right now.
You're probably getting an Amazon delivery is I'm guessing what's happening. Yeah.
If you see cats and dogs running by, then you'll understand that that is what I'm dealing with right now. But not only is it the understanding of the audiences and the inputs, but it's a speed play. If we talk about some of the most disruptive brands in the space, I would say Dude Wipes, Elf Cosmetics, the brands that have really made a name for themselves, it's because they move incredibly quick. And that is something that I think a lot of the larger brands maybe haven't been able to implement because of their legal and marketing restrictions and how delayed their content teams are. Turning around something that is up to date with consumer trends nowadays. I mean, everyone I think here is probably on TikTok. And if you're not on TikTok, you're on Instagram Reels and you're 6 weeks behind TikTok. That's what I am told. But trends change incredibly quick. Like you have a crazy event like the Mike Tyson fight, and the brands that were innovative and moved on that within those 48 hours had an advantage. And I think that's another area where we're seeing brands who lean into AI can be much more up to date to consumer trends.
100%. And I think the other thing to note is that it's not like an all or nothing on using AI, right? It's like you can use it to get a first draft, whether that is, text-based content, whether that is an image, whether that is a video. You can use it to very quickly come up with some kind of baseline. And then your creative team or whoever can kind of have at it and bring it into line with whatever your kind of legal or brand guidelines are. But it can just get you from, 0 to 75% or 80% like that. And then you can take it the rest of the way. So anyway, it's not like an are you or aren't you? There are variations, I think, in the extent to which you can use it.
That is such a good call out because that's one of the barriers that we've seen. And I think that's where it's the progress over perfection at the end of the day. Like, e-commerce has forced a rate of change that everyone's going to need to adopt one way or another. And being able to at least implement it into your operations is, again, a baseline. Everyone, table stakes, everyone needs to be working on that over the next 3 to 4 months.
Totally agree. And I think we've talked about using text-based content generation, which again feels like such a no-brainer. I'm curious kind of what you've seen it from an image generation perspective, because that's the one that just seems really hard, right? That's another one where I think it's so easy to use AI for image, kind of like changing out backgrounds or right, kind of like creating variations of images. But if you just go from 0 to image creation, the results are for sure, like you can get a good laugh out of them, but they are not necessarily something that you want like to represent your product or your brand. But I don't know. So I don't know if you like what your perspective is on using AI in image generation, but that's been one I've been watching super closely.
It's so funny because like I see the new Coca-Cola campaign, which has been everywhere because they leaned into fully using AI for their Christmas campaign. And I'm like, how the heck did you guys do this? Because like I log into like ChatGPT or I always use like the WhatsApp, is it the Meta AI one just for really fun, like random things. And it's fun, but that is it. Like anytime I try to reiterate on it, I'm like, okay, I need to fully reprompt this. Like I am the furthest thing from a prompt engineer. So I think it's incredible when I see some of the things being produced out there because I'm like, how the hell did you guys do that? It's amazing. But I will say the one thing that I've obviously been really close to is how Amazon's leaned into creative and image. I've played around with both like the video generator, not my favorite as of right now, but I think that's more Amazon's holding back on what they could do because of probably legal risks, I would say. The Creative Studio AI and some of their sponsor brands image generation is actually incredible. And I think the part that people are missing is we talked about you have to seamlessly integrate it with your operations. That's how you make it work. If everyone's using different tools, it's going to be inconsistent and not great. The Creative Studio AI and their sponsor brands, sponsor display image generators, the learning language model is actually pulling into the listing. So this can provide like a really seamless integration. All you have to do is input the ASIN and it does the prompting based on the content in your listing. That being said, if your content in your listing is terrible, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, you're going to have issues. But the fact that it's pulling in seamlessly and being its own prompt engineer is a part that I've always struggled with on the other AIs because I don't know what to come up with. And it's providing a level of consistency that's been really efficient. The second problem I think Amazon's done a really great job of solving is they make the image editable, which is something I have struggled. I cannot get consistent results when I try to edit them. Within Amazon, they're giving you a Lightroom-esque edit ability to select a part of your image and say, change this from an orange to a pumpkin, which makes it really easy to then again integrate with your operations and provide some level of consistency. So I've been really impressed on that side. I don't know as much on the content side, so I'm pumped to talk about that. But the creative side, they've done a great job.
Totally. Well, and just a level of comfort, right? It's not, it gets to that all or nothing. It's like it gives you something that you can then tweak and react to and pivot a little bit and get to a place where you feel really comfortable with it. And so I agree with you. It's such a powerful tool, and particularly for brands that don't have big in-house creative teams, that might be super resource constrained. It is such an awesome option. So
progress over perfection. You get it up and running. You test it, and if it's good, then you say, hey, let's make additional investments because this is proven. And I think that's the cool thing about what we do in general. I was going to say, that being said, I think the biggest issue like we see with brands is honestly auditing what they have going on. I think that's a really big struggle we've seen lately is like they upload something, they syndicate it from XYZ, and then they never touch it again because it is a lot of work. And I know this is something that you all have been working really deeply in both like the content brief side, which I'll kind of let you summarize, but auditing, uploading, and improving on making content and creative an iterative process. So can you talk a little bit about content brief in general and just shout out what it is?
Yeah, totally. And so hopefully you'll humor me with a little trip down memory lane, but as someone who's attended our Accelerate Summit the last couple of years, it was in 2023 that Dave got on stage and demoed, live AI generated content creation, right? And it was like this big moment where he picked someone out of the audience and it was little giant ladders. And just in the time that he was talking, right? Like we ran in the background content creation and came up with the images and the, kind of complete product listings in 6 different languages. They did it in Klingon. It was kind of this like, super hilarious, fun thing. And as he was walking through how we did it, he talked about this idea of like a fact sheet, right? It's data that's the equivalent of like 350 pages just of data. And so I think what really surprised him and all of us at Pattern was the fact that our brand partners were saying like, yeah, like the content creation, like cool, like we have teams for that. How can I get totally like, that's what my amazing creative teams are for. How can I get my hands on that fact sheet? And so that was what kind of drove us to have this journey of, okay, how do we kind of create a product out of that fact sheet? And that's what we call content brief. And so really it is built upon Pattern's 38 trillion e-commerce data points, market segment data, market segment share data, and then like foundational AI models that kind of ingest all of those data points and pieces of information and come up with this very actionable document, right? And you can look at it in the software, you can download it as a PDF, but basically it's like a guide for what are your opportunities when it comes to your listings. And so it's everything from how you optimize for keywords that you know your customers are finding your products and competitive products for. And, I think there are a number of tools actually that do that piece, but I think what's super differentiated about Content Brief is it'll analyze images, and it has 64 different image archetypes that, and it will analyze all of the products in your competitive set to say, okay, what types of images convert best? And here are your opportunities. And the same thing with product attributes, right? It will pull out, okay, what are the top converting product attributes for products that compete with you on your digital shelf? And here's where you're doing really well, and here's maybe where you have some opportunities. And so I think that what I think is super cool about it is that within the tool, you can either just click like action the recommendations and it gets automatically generated, and that's just a super fast and scalable way of doing it, or you can hand that off to your creative team and they can kind of pick and choose and say, okay, what tracks with our institutional knowledge or, kind of their just human experience. So there are options for how to implement, but the whole point of it is not just to deliver insights, but to actually also deliver what are some recommendations? What should you go change, right? And so we have a few case studies that are just, there's one brand that we worked with that had a 21 basis point increase in conversion on, a slow cooker. And so anyway, it's just been, I could go on and on. I will stop myself because I'm so excited about it, but it really is just a very powerful tool.
Well, I think there's a few things I want to hit on there. 38 trillion data points. And I believe Pattern is top 5, if not number 1 largest seller on Amazon. Goes back and forth.
Yeah, based on my latest knowledge, we're the top global seller on Amazon. Yeah.
Which is incredible. And the reason I shout that out is because I think it's really important to understand how that relates to 38 trillion data points. And anyone who's used AI for their day-to-day probably understands how powerful it is having access to that many data points. And it gives you a really strong foundation for just understanding how the algorithm works. I mean, there should be no argument when you are the number 1 largest seller that you guys know Amazon really well. And that could be a whole, testament in itself. So I wanted to iterate on that. But the second part that I think is really important and needs to be identified is the unique approach you went to applying Content Brief. It is a brief for a reason. It's not a button that you just click and apply and maybe have some risk. Like you said, it's giving you the recommendations based off all the inputs, which is proven from everything we just discussed, and then allowing those recommendations to be integrated directly into your team. Meaning from the results side, yes, it's more than likely going to work. It's proven, but also it allows for a lot of operational efficiency. So anyone who's struggled to scale that side with AI, you're providing that solution, which is incredible.
Yeah. We've gone back and forth on this. I think it may be possible to generate something like the Content Brief manually, but I think it would take a lot of people, a lot of time, right? And so when you start to think about, I don't even know if it's possible, but let's even say it is, right? It's like, maybe you could get one in days and days. And multiple people. And so to be able to basically hit a button and then kind of generate this thing near instantaneously is really pretty powerful when you start to think about just the number of SKUs, a brand might have. And to do this across, to your point, different things work on different marketplaces. And so to go do this on a kind of SKU specific, marketplace specific basis, it's really, really key to scale. So
it's incredible because you're really unlocking the 80-20 there. Like if you need to deep dive on your 20% of your ASINs that are driving the majority of your sales, you're allowing them to do that. On the flip side, if you need a quick and easy solution for everything that you're listed, but maybe don't have the internal teams to prioritize, you have that progress over perfection model.
Totally. Oh my gosh. I'm drinking the progress over perfection Kool-Aid. I love it.
Hey, my team will tell you that is, we work quickly. And that is a huge aspect of that, because I think it's really difficult to have perfection in the area that we work. Like e-commerce just moves too quick. Anyone who listens knows like that is always kind of my, I don't know, I don't motto. Is it? I don't.
No, I love it. Well, and you learn, right? Like you learn from doing, right? Like if you can accept you're not going to be perfect, you get some feedback and you can iterate and get better over time.
Yeah. Do you have any exciting updates or anything that you're looking for in the future of Content Brief? Like you rolled it out. I remember getting a text message at the conference basically being like, you missed the first 10 minutes of this, which is a huge mistake. So get here. I walk in, it's like standing room only at this point. There's people lined up on the wall, really being like, this is one of the most amazing presentations. So you're obviously biased. Like you have to say incredible things about Dave, but like I walked in towards the end and it was that incredible. So it's been a year. You've iterated, you've learned a lot. Is there anything else that you think is going to be opportunistic in the future that you guys want to implement?
We're really on the front end of this. So it probably feels like a year, but that was actually just in May. So it was, yeah, like a lifetime has happened between then. I know. So, we really do still feel like we're on the front end, but I think, you called out that the data set, we add something like 60 billion data points, every couple of weeks. And so I think that's the exciting part for me is that this only gets better and better as our data set grows. And I think you called it out, but one thing I did want to talk about a little bit is that there are Content Brief is obviously near and dear to my heart. There are a lot of amazing AI driven tools. I think one just maybe, I don't know if it's a watch out or just kind of word of advice. At the end of the day, a lot of AI tools are built on the same kind of foundational large language models, right? And so what really will start to differentiate them is what is the data set that trained them? What is the data set that runs through them? And so anyway, just as brands or as folks are kind of evaluating different tools available to them, I think there are a lot of good ones out there, but that I think is something to look at because that will be what differentiates, tools from one another. But so I think my biggest thing is just we are getting so much great feedback on what components of the content brief are super valuable. But I think as I look to the future, we have to save our big announcements for Accelerate next year. But but I think just on an ongoing basis,
I'm going to be there. I'm excited. I'll more than likely be live streaming the whole event. Anyone who follows me for big events, that's my favorite piece. I'm like, we're breaking the news on all of this, so I can't wait.
I love it. But I think in the immediate term, it's, we're still in beta. And so we're taking feedback in super often. So just from how our brand partners are using it, what sections of it they're finding the most valuable, we'll just continue to lean in there and continue to add those huge numbers of data points that make the insights even better. So
I love it. I would highly recommend anyone who's interested or has learned a lot from this podcast. Like I've said it before and I'll say it again, the Pattern team is incredible, whether it's how you all share knowledge or how you partner with brands, agencies, things like that. Highly recommend, go follow the team so you could stay up to date to all of these. And then for anyone who's interested after listening to this podcast, as always, we're definitely going to link any of the resources that you want to include with Content Brief specifically and some of the other work that we've done together. We might as well throw in there as well. And yeah, just thank you so much for hopping on and identifying the issues that we're seeing in the space, then also transparently answering some of the best resources of how to solve the problems with AI.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as per usual, it is so delightful to talk to you. And this was really fun. So thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your week.
You too.